What happens when we die? I want to answer this common question I get from clients and from readers and viewers. I commonly get asked, is there an afterlife? Does the soul continue to exist? And so let me tell you what evidence I've collected in my 11 years of being a professional reader. And just so you know where this is coming from, how I've collected my own evidence so that you know I'm not just making this up or giving you my opinion. I've been a professional psychic reader for 11 years. Now, this channel is a lot about tarot and astrology, which are tools I use every day in my business. But what you may not know is I started my career as a psychic medium, meaning I just did readings that connected clients with their loved ones in spirit. And still today, mediumship makes up at least 25% of my business. Clients regularly come to me to connect with loved ones in spirit because they have questions. Maybe they need to know their loved ones at peace. Maybe they just need validation that their soul continues to live and is a part of their life. And sometimes they need to know their loved ones made it safely. And what I mean by that is clients can have a loved one who maybe didn't share the same beliefs. Maybe they died in a certain way. Maybe they just didn't believe in afterlife. So they really need that validation that their soul is continuing to exist and thrive. So let's really get into what happens when we die. Is there an afterlife? 100% yes, there is an afterlife. And here is why I believe that. When I am doing readings and communicating with loved ones and spirits, I have to give my client evidence. And what that means is I have to be able to tell them something. Spirit has to be able to come through and show something that's going on in their world. It has to be something I possibly could not know or could not make up. And so commonly spirits will come through in readings and talk about what's going on in the client's life. Now, this can be anywhere from major things to little things. I've had, hey, they're talking about you just changed jobs, or you just got a recognition at work, or maybe you just went through a breakup. I've even had small things like, why are you limiting your diet? Why are you not eating ice cream? They even talk about the small things that we do in life. And they talk about how the client's feeling, things they're experiencing, what they're going through. So many times a client can show up full of life and, just very optimistic, but that soul can come through and say, hey, you're feeling really lonely right now and life is really hard. And when you say that and it touches the client, you know that they are talking about something that you couldn't know. And through these readings, through these experiences of spirit coming through and talking about things in the client's life, I feel like I could go on for hours with stories of what they brought up. They will bring up animals in your life. They will bring up their pets. They will talk about their loved ones in spirit with them and talk about their personalities, all these things that I just could not know as a reader, but my client knows is exactly what their loved one in spirit is like. Now, where do we go? Where does the spirit go? Certain beliefs believe in heaven or a certain place the spirit actually goes to or ascends to. What I have found, and this is again through my readings and through all the information I'm collecting, is that there is a spiritual plane and it seems to overlap with our world because spirit seems to be all around, seeing what we're doing, knowing what's going on in our lives, and they seem to be existing around us. Let me give you an example. A lot of times I can be reading for a client and be like, actually, the spirit tends to hang out in your kitchen. And so there'll be this spot where things fall, or you'll hear sounds, or maybe the lights flicker. And so it gives evidence that they're in a certain area of where my client is. Now, this could be them visiting, but I have found that the spiritual plane just seems to overlap with the physical plane. Now, what does this plane or spirit life look like on the other side? Here is what I have found, what has come through in readings, and what gives my clients so much comfort. Spirit tends to have all their favorite things on the other side. Now, this is where it gets kind of crazy. I can't tell you how many times I've been reading for a client, their loved one comes through, and I see them smoking. I can smell cigarette smoke. I can taste it sometimes, and I will tell my client, hey, your dad was a smoker, wasn't he? He loved smoking. And they'll be like, oh my God, yes. Spirit tends to still have those things they like, the bad habits they enjoy. all still available to them. I've even smelled beer, liquor, and so many times spirit will come through eating their favorite things or talking about how they're with their grandma who is cooking for them, like things that these spirits did for each other when they were here in the physical life. That is all still going on in the spirit world. So they're still getting their favorite things, getting their favorite foods. Maybe some bad habits still exist, although I find in the spirit world, the bad habits can't hurt them. So a lot of my clients will worry about their loved ones. They'll be like, "Oh gosh, they passed away before their favorite show aired," or they loved this band and they loved music and they loved playing music, or they really enjoyed eating, or they enjoyed this in life. And so there can be a distress for those of us still living, thinking that their loved ones don't have access to this anymore. Well, they do. And so this brings a lot of comfort to know that your loved ones are still enjoying themselves, still getting all their favorite things, and continuing to enjoy the experience. Now, what I find a difference is between living in a human body and then being on the spiritual plane is our perspective changes. So spirits usually have that bigger perspective of what's important, what is not. It's a little bit more spiritual. So they tend to not stay upset about the little things. Like they're not upset about the heirloom they didn't inherit. They're not upset about the money stuff anymore. I've even found that spirits can come through for clients when they used to have tension here in the physical plane. Maybe they didn't get along and they come through, saying, "Hey, that doesn't matter. I'm here to support you." And so their perspective tends to change. It tends to be a little less petty. And what really matters is love and the connection between them and you or the client. Now, a big thing I notice too when I'm reading for clients, they will say, "Will you tell my loved one I miss them?" Or "Will you tell them I love them?" And of course, I relay the message. But the beautiful thing is, you or the client can tell them this on their own, because your loved ones, when we die and we're in spirit, we are still around. We still hear your prayers. We still hear it when you're talking out loud to them. We still hear all those thoughts and messages that us in the physical world want to send them. So they still hear all those messages from you. Now, when we pass, I find that there tends to not be a long period of time before we can communicate. Every medium has their boundaries or their structure and how they give readings. Some mediums may not want to do a reading for a year after a loved one's passed. Some may want to wait a few days. For me, I feel like spirit can communicate pretty soon after their passing, but I like to give it a little time so that my client, whoever's coming to me for the reading, has time to process grief. Grief is a heavy feeling, and if we're actively in grief, it can be hard to be open to messages or to the communication. And I know that sounds funny because when we're in grief, we're usually, "I want to hear from them. I miss them so bad." But there tends to be a preference with spirit where they need you to be a little bit lighter in the emotion. And that's not criticism. It's just saying, have some time to process this and then, hey, we'll chat. But they are still around in that grieving process. They're still close by to you or the client. They're still supporting you. It's just when it comes to doing a reading and connecting through a medium, give it just a little time so that you can process grief, you can feel through it, and the reading tends to be more expansive. Now, spirit, like I said a minute ago, they hear us, right? They hear your thoughts, they hear your messages to them, they hear all the feels you have for them. They also respect your boundaries. So if you feel like you have a spirit or a loved one that is communicating with you quite a bit, like maybe they're knocking things over, they're messing with the lights, maybe they're keeping you up at night, you can simply tell them, "Hey, give me some space. I need to sleep," or "This is too much." You can tell them that as well, and they will adjust their behavior because they respect your boundaries. And if you're on the other side of that and you feel like, "Gosh, I have this loved one. We were so close. I don't feel them around," or "I don't feel like they're communicating with me." A lot of times spirits are observant and they wait until you ask them for a sign, or sometimes you got to assign them something, like say, "Hey, show me a pink rose." I don't know. Just give them a symbol, and I promise you will start seeing that symbol everywhere you go in life. So if you feel like your spirit's not communicating with you as much, simply tell them you want to hear from them more and give them a way to communicate with you. So I hope this video has answered some questions or at least been interesting to know from my perspective what happens when we die. I have done tens of thousands of readings and I find a commonality when spirit comes through, what they're showing us, what they're reporting, what they're revealing, and there tends to be a common thread on what the spirit plane looks like, where it's at. 100% afterlife exists. This is what happens when we die. This is what I feel is the experience. I would love to know in the comments, leave me a comment. What do you want to know more about? Are you wondering what happens with reincarnation? Are you wondering if a loved one has visited you? That's another one I get a lot. Clients will be like, I had this dream. Was this a visitation? Was this a random dream? Tell me your experiences in the comment. If you like this video, let me know if you want to hear more about these experiences because I find afterlife fascinating. I absolutely love spirit and I love sharing my experiences. Check out the description. There's all the links to find me and I'll see you next time.